Okay, the end of chapter 1. People aren't supposed to look back. I'm certainly not going to do it anymore. I've finished my war book now. The next one I write is going to be fun. This one is a failure, and it had to be, since it was written by a pillar of salt. It begins like this. Listen, Billy Pilgrim has come unstuck in time. And it ends like this. Poo tea wheat. Listen, Billy Pilgrim has come unstuck in time. Poo tweet. Listen, Billy Pilgrim has come unstuck in time. Billy has gone to sleep, a senile widower, and awakened on his wedding day. He has walked through a door in 1955 and come out another one in 1941. He has gone back through that door to find himself in 1963. He has seen his birth and death many times, he says, and pays random visits to all events in between. He says, Billy is spastic in time, has no control over where he is going next, and the trips aren't necessarily fun. He is in a constant state of stage fright, he says, because he never knows what part of his life he is going to have to act in next. Billy was born in 1922 in Ilium, New York, the only child of a barber there. He was a funny-looking child who became a funny-looking youth, tall and weak and shaped like a bottle of Coca-Cola. He graduated from Ilium High School in the upper third of his class and attended night sessions at the Ilium School of Optometry for 1 semester before being drafted for military service in the Second World War. His father died in a hunting accident during the war. So it goes. Billy saw service with the infantry in Europe and was taken prisoner by the Germans. After his honorable discharge from the Army in 1945, Billy again enrolled in the Ilium School of Optometry. During his senior year there, he became engaged to the daughter of the founder and owner of the school, and then suffered a mild nervous collapse. He was treated in a veterans hospital near Lake Placid. Excuse me. He was treated in a veterans hospital near Lake Placid and was given shock treatments and released. He married his fiancée, finished his education, and was set up in business in Ilium by his father-in-law. Ilium is a particularly good city for optometrists because the General Forge and Foundry Company is there. Every employee is required to own a pair of safety glasses and to wear them in areas where manufacturing is going on. GF&F has 68,000 employees in Ilium. That calls for a lot of lenses and a lot of frames. Frames are where the money is. Billy became rich. He had 2 children, Barbara and Robert. In time, his daughter Barbara married another optometrist, and Billy set him up in business. Billy's son, Robert, had a lot of trouble in high school, but then he joined the famous Green Berets. He straightened out, became a fine young man, and he fought in Vietnam. Early in 1968, a group of optometrists, with Billy among them, chartered an airplane to fly them from Ilium to an international convention of optometrists in Montreal. The plane crashed on the top of Sugarbush Mountain in Vermont. Everybody was killed but Billy. So it goes. While Billy was recuperating in a hospital in Vermont, his wife died accidentally of carbon monoxide poisoning. So it goes. When Billy finally got home to Ilium after the airplane crash, he was quiet for a while. He had a terrible scar across the top of his skull. He didn't resume practice. He had a housekeeper. His daughter came over almost every day. And then, without any warning, Billy went to New York City and got on an all-night radio program designated to talk. Oh my God, I can't fucking read. And then, without any warning, Billy went to New York City and got on an all-night radio program devoted to talk. He told them about having come unstuck in time. He said, too, that he had been kidnapped by a flying saucer in 1967. The saucer was from the planet Tralfamadore, he said. He was taken to Tralfamadore where he was displayed naked in a zoo, he said. He was mated there with a former Earthling movie star named Montana Wildhack. So it goes. It doesn't actually say that, but so it goes. So it goes is only for very specific things. Some night owls in Ilium heard Billy on the radio, and one of them called Billy's daughter, Barbara. Barbara was upset. She and her husband went down to New York and brought Billy home. Billy insisted mildly that everything he had said on the radio was true. He said he had been kidnapped by Tralfamadorians on the night of his daughter's wedding. He hadn't been missed, he said, because the Tralfamadorians had taken him through a time warp, so that he could be on Tralfamador for years and still be away from Earth for only a microsecond. Another month went by without incident, and then Billy wrote a letter to the Ilium News Leader, which the paper published. It described the creatures from Tralfamador. The letter said that they were 2 feet high and green, and shaped like plumbers' friends. Okay, I gotta look. What does that mean? It's shaped like a toilet plunger? What is that shape? I tried to Google it, but I don't have anything. I think it means shaped like a toilet plunger. I'm just gonna go with that. They were shaped like plumbers' friends. I debated getting tattoos that say "so it goes." And Pootie Wheat. Damn it, I should have got Pootie Wheat. What am I doing? Plumber's best friend is a wrench, if you ask Mario. Yeah, I don't know. 2 feet high with 3 foot hips, you know? Okay, the letter said that they were 2 feet high and green and shaped like plumbers' friends. Their suction cups, oh, they are absolutely shaped like toilet plungers. Their suction cups were on the ground, and their shafts, which were completely flexible, usually pointed to the sky. Toilet plunger. Their suction cups were on the ground, and their shafts, which were extremely flexible, usually pointed towards the sky. At the top of each shaft was a little hand with a green eye in its palm. The creatures were friendly, and they could see in 4th dimensions. Oh, and the creatures were friendly, and they could see in 4 dimensions. Four dimensions HD. Wait, is there a drawing? I'm so excited. That's a great drawing. Wow. Hold on, I'm gonna hold up a picture real quick. Okay, these are Tralfamadorians. They look like toilet plungers. I approve this message. Also, I have to pee again. I hope I don't get abducted by aliens. I'll be right back. Come on, that's just a Tralfamadorian. Don't be shy. The creatures were friendly, and they could see in 4 dimensions. They pitied Earthlings for being able to see only 3. They had many wonderful things to teach Earthlings, especially about time. Billy promised to tell what some of these wonderful things were in his next letter. Billy was working on his second letter when the first letter was published. The second letter started out like this. The most important thing I learned on Tralfamador was that when a person dies, he only appears to die. He is still very much alive in the past. So it is very silly for people to cry at his funeral. All moments, past, present, and future, always have existed, always will exist. The Tralfamadorians can look at all the different moments, just the way that we can look at a stretch of the Rocky Mountains. For instance, they can see how permanent all the moments are. And they can look at any moment that interests them. Go away, fly. They can see how permanent all the moments are, and they can look at any moment that interests them. It is just an illusion that we have here on Earth, that one moment follows another one, like beads on a string, and that once a moment is gone, it's gone forever. When a Tralfamadorian sees a corpse, all he thinks is that the dead person is in a bad condition in that particular moment. But not... Oh, sorry. When a Tralfamadorian looks at a corpse, all he thinks is that the dead person is in a bad condition in that particular moment. But that the person is just fine in plenty of other moments. Now, when I myself hear that somebody is dead, I simply shrug and say what the Tralfamadorians say about dead people, which is, so it goes. And so on. Billy was working on this letter in the basement rumpus room of his empty house. It was his housekeeper's day off. There was an old typewriter in the rumpus room. It was a beast. It weighed as much as a storage battery. Billy couldn't carry it very far very easily, which is why he was writing in the rumpus room instead of somewhere else. The oil burner had quit. A mouse had eaten through the insulation of a wire, leading to the thermostat. The temperature in the house was down to 50 degrees. But Billy hadn't noticed. He wasn't warmly dressed either. He was barefoot and still in his pajamas and bathrobe, though it was late afternoon. His bare feet were blue and ivory. The cockles of Billy's heart, at any rate, were glowing coals. What made them so hot was Billy's belief that he was going to comfort so many people with the truth about time. His door chimes upstairs had been ringing and ringing. It was his daughter, Barbara, up there, wanting in. Now she let herself in with a key, crossed the floor above his head, calling, "Father! Daddy, where are you?" and so on. Billy didn't answer her, so she was nearly hysterical, expecting to find his corpse. And then she looked into the very last place there was to look, which was the rumpus room. "Why didn't you answer me when I called?" Barbara wanted to know, standing there in the door of the rumpus room. She had the afternoon paper with her, the one in which Billy described his friends from Tralfamadore. "I didn't hear you," said Billy. The orchestration of the moment was this. Barbara was only 21 years old, but she thought her father was senile, even though he was only 46. Senile because of the damage to his brain in the airplane crash. She also thought that she was the head of the family, since she had to manage her mother's funeral, since she had to get a housekeeper for Billy, and all that. Also, Barbara and her husband were having to look after Billy's business interests, which were considerable, since Billy didn't seem to give a damn for business anymore. All of this responsibility at such an early age made her a bitchy flibberty-gibbet. And Billy, meanwhile, was trying to hang on to his dignity, to persuade Barbara and everyone else that he was far from senile, that, on the contrary, he was devoting himself to a calling much higher than mere business. He was doing nothing less now, he thought, than prescribing corrective lenses for earthling souls. So many of those souls were lost and wretched, Billy believed, because they could not see as well as his little green friends on Tralfamadore. "Don't lie to me, Father," said Barbara. "I know perfectly well that you heard me when I called." This was a fairly pretty girl, except that she had legs like an Edwardian grand piano. Now she raised hell about him and the letter in the paper. She said he was making a laughingstock of himself and everyone associated with him. "Father, father, father," said Barbara, "what are we going to do with you? Are you going to force us to put you where your mother is?" Billy's mother was still alive. She was in bed in an old people's home called Pine Knoll on the edge of Ilium. "What is it about my letter that makes you so mad?" Billy wanted to know. "It's all just crazy. None of it's true." "It's all true." Billy's anger was not going to rise with hers. He never got mad at anything. He was wonderful that way. "There is no such planet as Tralfamadore." "It can't be detected from Earth, if that's what you mean," said Billy. "Earth can't be detected from Tralfamadore, as far as that goes. They're both very small, and they're very far apart." "Where did you get a crazy name like that? Tralfamadore." "That's what the creatures who live there call it." "Oh, God," said Barbara, and she turned her back on him. She celebrated frustration by clapping her hands. "May I ask you a simple question?" "Of course." "Why is it you never mentioned any of this before the airplane crash?" "I didn't think the time was ripe." And so on. Billy says that he first came unstuck in time in 1944, long before his trip to Tralfamadore. The Tralfamadorians didn't have anything to do with him coming unstuck. They were simply able to give him insights into what was happening, what was really going on. Billy first came unstuck while World War II was in progress. Billy was a chaplain's assistant in the war. A chaplain's assistant is customarily a figure of fun in the American Army. Billy was no exception. He was powerless to harm the enemy or to help his friends. In fact, he had no friends. He was a valet to a preacher, expected no promotions or medals, bore no arms, and had a meek faith in loving Jesus, which most soldiers found putrid. He was a valet to a preacher, expected no promotions or medals, bore no arms, and had a meek faith in a loving Jesus, which most soldiers found putrid. While on maneuvers in South Carolina, Billy played hymns he knew from childhood. Played them on a little black organ, which was waterproof. It had 39 keys and 2 stops, Vox Humana and Vox Celeste. Billy also had charge of a portable altar, an olive drab attaché case with telescoping legs. It was lined with crimson plush, and nestled in that passionate plush were an anodized aluminum cross and a Bible. The altar and the organ were made by a vacuum cleaner company in Camden, New Jersey, and said so. One time on maneuvers, Billy was playing "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God," with music by Johann Sebastian Bach and words by Martin Luther. It was a Sunday morning. Billy and his chaplain had gathered a congregation of about 50 soldiers on a Carolina hillside. An umpire appeared. There were umpires everywhere. Men who said who was winning or losing the theoretical battle, who was alive and who was dead. The umpire had comical news. The congregation had been theoretically spotted from the air by a theoretical enemy. They were all theoretically dead now. The theoretical corpses laughed and ate a hearty noontime meal. Remembering this incident years later, Billy was struck by what a Tralfamadorian adventure with death that had been. To be dead and to eat at the same time. Toward the end of maneuvers, Billy was given an emergency furlough home because his father, a barber in Ilium, New York, was shot dead by a friend while they were out hunting deer. So it goes. When Billy got back from his furlough, there were orders for him to go overseas. He was needed in the headquarters company of an infantry regiment fighting in Luxembourg. The regimental chaplain's assistant had been killed in action. So it goes. When Billy joined the regiment, it was in the process of being destroyed by the Germans in the famous Battle of the Bulge. Billy never got to meet the chaplain he was supposed to assist, was never issued a steel helmet and combat boots. This was in December of 1944, during the last mighty German attack of the war. Billy survived, but he was a dazed wanderer, far behind the new German lines. 3 other wanderers, not quite so dazed, allowed Billy to tag along. 2 of them were scouts, and 1 was an anti-tank gunner. They were without food or maps. Avoiding the Germans, they were delivering themselves into rural silences ever more profound. They ate snow. They went Indian file. First came the scouts, clever, graceful, quiet. They had rifles. Next came the anti-tank gunner, clumsy and dense, warning Germans away with a Colt 45 automatic in one hand and a trench knife in the other. Last came Billy Pilgrim, empty-handed, bleakly ready for death. Billy was preposterous, 6 feet and 3 inches tall, with a chest and shoulders like a box of kitchen matches. He had no helmet, no overcoat, no weapon, and no boots. On his feet were cheap, low-cut civilian shoes, which he had bought for his father's funeral. Billy had lost a heel, which made him bob up and down, up and down. The involuntary dancing, up and down, made his hip joints sore. Billy was wearing a thin field jacket, a shirt and trousers of scratchy wool, long underwear that was soaked with sweat. He was the only one of the 4 who had a beard. It was a random, bristly beard, and some of the bristles were white, even though Billy was only 21 years old. He was also going bald. Wind and cold and violent exercise had turned his face crimson. He didn't look like a soldier at all. He looked like a filthy flamingo. Thank you. It's as difficult as ever to read with an audience. Thank you. And on the third day of wandering, somebody shot at the four from far away. Shot 4 times as they crossed a narrow brick road. Aw, shit, we do have a mini F. No, stop. Shots fired. Okay. And on the third day of wandering, somebody shot at the 4 from far away. Shot 4 times as they crossed a narrow brick road. 1 shot was for the scouts. The next one was for the anti-tank gunner, whose name was Roland Weary. The 3rd bullet was for the filthy flamingo, who stopped dead center in the road when the lethal bee buzzed past his ear. Billy stood there politely, giving the marksman another chance. It was his addled understanding of the rules of warfare that the marksman should be given another chance. The next shot missed Billy's kneecaps by inches, going end on end from the sound of it. Roland Weary and the scouts were safe in a ditch, and Weary growled at Billy, "Get out of the road, you dumb motherfucker." The last word was still a novelty in the speech of white people in 1944. It was fresh and astonishing to Billy, who had never fucked anybody. And it did its job. It woke him up and it got him off the road. "Saved your life again, you dumb bastard," Weary said to Billy in the ditch. He had been saving Billy's life for days, cursing him, kicking him, slapping him, making him move. It was absolutely necessary that cruelty be used, because Billy wouldn't do anything to save himself. Billy wanted to quit. He was cold, hungry, embarrassed, incompetent. He could scarcely distinguish between sleep and wakefulness now. On the third day, found no important differences either between walking and standing still. He wished everyone would go on without him. He wished everyone would leave him alone. "You guys go on without me," he said again and again. Weary was as new to war as Billy. He was a replacement too. As a part of a gun crew, he had helped to fire one shot in anger from a 57mm anti-tank gun. The gun made a ripping sound, like the opening of the zipper on the fly of God Almighty. The gun lapped up snow and vegetation with a blowtorch 30 feet long. The flame left a black arrow on the ground, showing the Germans exactly where the gun was hidden. The shot was a miss. What had been missed was a Tiger tank. It swiveled its 88mm snout around sniffingly, saw the arrow on the ground. It fired. It killed everybody on the gun crew, but Weary. So it goes. Roland Weary was only 18, was at the end of an unhappy childhood, spent mostly in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He had been unpopular in Pittsburgh. He had been unpopular because he was stupid and fat and mean and smelled like bacon no matter how much he washed. He was always being ditched in Pittsburgh by people who did not want him with them. It made Weary sick to be ditched. When Weary was ditched, he would find somebody who was even more unpopular than himself, and he would horse around with that person for a while, pretending to be friendly. And then he would find some pretext for beating the shit out of them. It was a pattern. It was a crazy, sexy, murderous relationship Weary entered into with people he eventually beat up. He told them about his father's collection of guns and swords and torture instruments and leg irons and so on. Weary's father, who was a plumber, actually did collect such things. And his collection was insured for $4,000. He wasn't alone. He belonged to a big club composed of people who collected things like that. Weary's father once gave Weary's mother a Spanish thumbscrew in working condition for a kitchen paperweight. Another time, he gave her a table lamp whose base was a model 1 foot high of the famous Iron Maiden of Nuremberg. The real Iron Maiden was a medieval torture instrument, a sort of boiler which was shaped like a woman on the outside and lined with spikes. The front of the woman was composed of 2 hinged doors. The idea was to put a criminal inside and then close the doors slowly. There were 2 special spikes where his eyes were supposed to be. There was a drain at the bottom to let out all the blood. So it goes. Weary had told Billy Pilgrim about the Iron Maiden, about the drain in her bottom, and what that was for. He had talked to Billy about dum-dums. He told him about his father's Derringer pistol, which could be carried in a vest pocket, which was yet capable of making a hole in a man, which a bullbat could fly through without touching either wing. Weary scornfully bet Billy one time that he didn't even know what a blood gutter was. Billy guessed that it was the drain at the bottom of the Iron Maiden. Bullbat, sorry. A bullbat. He told him about his father's Derringer pistol, which could be carried in a vest pocket, which was yet capable of making a hole in a man, which a bullbat could fly through without touching either wing. Weary scornfully bet Billy one time that he didn't even know what a blood gutter was. Billy guessed that it was the drain at the bottom of the Iron Maiden, but that was wrong. A blood gutter, Billy learned, was the shallow groove on the side of the blade of a sword or a bayonet. Weary told Billy about neat tortures he'd read about or seen in the movies or heard on the radio. About other neat tortures that he himself had invented. One of the inventions was sticking a dentist drill into a guy's ear. He asked Billy what he thought the worst form of execution was. Billy had no opinion. The correct answer turned out to be this. You take a guy out on an anthill in the desert. See? He's facing upward. And you put honey all over his balls and pecker. And you cut off his eyelids so he has to stare at the sun till he dies. So it goes. Now, lying in the ditch, with Billy and the scouts after having been shot at, Weary made Billy take a very close look at his trench knife. It wasn't government issue. It was a present from his father. It had a 10-inch blade that was triangular in cross-section. Its grip consisted of brass knuckles. Was a chain of rings through which Weary slipped his stubby fingers. The rings weren't simple. They bristled with spikes. I have a knife like that. Weary laid the spikes along Billy's cheek. rowled the cheek with savagely affectionate restraint. Savagely affectionate restraint. How'd you like to be hit with this? He wanted to know. I wouldn't, Billy replied. Said Billy. How'd you like to be hit with this, He wanted to know. I wouldn't, said Billy. Know why the blade's triangular? No. It makes a wound that won't close up. Oh. It makes a 3-sided hole in a guy. You stick an ordinary knife in a guy. It makes a slit, right? A slit closes up, right? Right? Shit, what do you know? What the hell do they teach you in college? I wasn't there very long, said Billy, which was true. He had had only 6 months of college. And the college hadn't been a regular college either. It had been the night school of the Ilium School of Optometry. Joe College, said Weary scathingly. Billy shrugged. There's more to life than what you read in books, said Weary. You'll find that out. Billy made no reply to this either. There in the ditch, since he didn't want the conversation to go on any longer than necessary. He was dimly tempted to say, ugh. He was dimly tempted to say, though, that he knew a thing or two about gore. Billy, after all, had contemplated torture and hideous wounds at the beginning and the end of nearly every day of his childhood. Billy had an extremely gruesome crucifix hanging on the wall of his little bedroom in Ilium. A military surgeon would have admired the clinical fidelity of the artist's rendition of Christ's wounds. The spear wound, the thorn wounds, the holes that were made by the iron spikes. Billy's Christ died horribly. He was pitiful. So it goes. Billy wasn't a Catholic, even though he grew up with that ghastly crucifix on the wall. His father had no religion. His mother was a substitute organist for several churches around town. She took Billy with her whenever she played, taught him to play a little too. She said she was going to join a church as soon as she decided which one was right. She never did decide. She did develop a terrific hankering for a crucifix, though. And she bought one from a Santa Fe gift shop during a trip the little family made out west during the Great Depression. Like so many Americans, she was trying to construct a life that made sense from things she found in gift shops. And the crucifix went up on the wall of Billy Pilgrim.